All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we are going to go over, let me get this off here. How not to lose your license.
Yeah, tough
So,
love or fun topics, depending on how you look at it.
yes, exactly. All right, I'm sharing there. And now I'm going to go to this and let's play. There I am.
There you go.
All right. So, how not to lose your license. So, Debbie and I are going to go over some ideas. Well, not ideas. These are our opinions. These are what we've seen before. We've taken lots of classes, and being in real estate myself 30 years and being a broker for 25 years, I've seen this happen to agents. But the one thing that let me preface this in my opinion is a lot of agents, I use the word lightly, violate some of these things, but luckily 99 times out of 100 there's no problem unless there's a problem. So
Right.
you might say, I might go through this video, I might say that a lot because I'm going to tell you our opinion, our views of doing these things or not doing these things could lose your license, suspend your license, get a fine, have to take another class. But again, preface, if you see any of these things that we're saying and say, well, I've done that or someone else has done that, nothing's happened to them, because I always say this, it's kind of like tell people, have you ever went over the speed limit? Yes. Well, that was against the law, but you didn't get caught.
Right.
I think a lot of us speed sometimes, but lucky we don't get caught. Did you roll through a stop sign? That's how real estate is too. When you do some of these things, and then some agents, I catch it at least once or twice a month. I'm on the phone with either one of our agents or another agent from another company I've been in the business 30 years. I've never, that's not how I've done it. And just because they haven't gotten caught, and there was never a problem where someone brought up with the division. So I just want to make sure that's clear, because some agents do go, no, we do this all the time. I'm like, yeah, you just never got caught. It doesn't make it right. If that makes sense. So, all right. Well, let's go for the first slide, Deb. I will let you go. Oh, let me see that. There we go. Go ahead,
Okay.
Deb.
The very first one that's on here, and this, by the way, is not ever brought up in any of my core law classes, or even when we had Ann Pettit here. She didn't even talk about this, but I'm going to, because this is something that we see here in the office, because we have so many agents almost on a daily basis, and it's so easy to avoid. Not renewing your license or turning your CEU in. We all know, because we went through the classes, and it says, you have to do your 20-hour post license class your first year and renew, and then after that you have 3 years. It's not a secret. They send you emails, they send you notices in the mail when it's time to renew your license. Pay attention to those guys, because they're brutal. Now, if you get suspended for not renewing your license, or turning in your 20-hour post or your 30-hour post license, and they suspend you, it takes weeks and maybe sometimes a month, because now it has to go through their legal department to get you reactivated. So
Right.
and they charge you a lot of money to get reactivated if you're suspended.
And what I feel, my personal opinion on this, is that there's so many agents out there. I'll just say this, is that 80% of realtors do this as a side job, a second job, something else. 20 to 25% of agents at all companies, 20 or in the industry, have zero sales every year. Not the same people. So sometimes they get back into it. And I see this. I've had this happen with our agents. They have a deal, and lucky they looked online just to check out who's doing what, and they get an offer from some agent at another company. And we find out they're not even licensed. Their license was suspended or something like that. So sometimes, and I don't think, I hope not a lot of agents do this on purpose, but sometimes they just forget because they're not very active. And especially us as a company, we're on top of that. We're watching as much as we possibly can. And there's, kudos to us, but there are agents with companies. I mean, not bad companies, but they don't have the personnel. They don't care. They don't look. So if the agent misses it, the company misses it. And they've been, I've had that happen a couple of times. I'm talking to a broker. I'm like, do you know your agent's been suspended for 8 months? And they said they've been doing work. I have that happen at least once or twice a year. So sorry, Deb, keep on going.
No, that's okay. It's a good point because he's saying kudos to us because we care, right? But it is not the broker's responsibility to keep track of what you're doing. It's your license. You have to be the one that's responsible for it. So the next one is allowing unlicensed, unsupervised access to the properties. Now, this is number 2 on the list because it's been brought up in several core law classes, the management broker responsibility classes that we take, because it's very easy to avoid it. And you will get into trouble if you give that code to anyone that is not a real estate agent and let them in. When you're standing at the front door, don't let them see what you're typing in there. If your person gets there before you and you give them that code and say, go on in, I'll be there in a minute, you just broke that rule, right?
Yeah,
So don't do that.
One of our agents, and it was a seller, it didn't go to a complaint, but the seller called their agent called. All for doing this is that now with ring cameras, they could see what you do. So one of our agents was showing a property to her sister, and her little niece was there, who's like 8 years old. And she thought it would be fun to tell the niece, hey, you want to do the code to get the key? And she gave the key, and the seller just went nuts because they saw it on the ring camera, watching the people come to the door and giving out the code to a little girl, thinking there was, wasn't, anything like that. So what I'm saying is that people are watching.
Yeah.
So they're hearing you at your front door. They're hearing you in the house with cameras. So you got to watch what you say and what you do.
Guys, that also includes general home inspectors, any person that's going there to fix anything, and appraisers. An agent or the seller has to be at that house when people are going in. They have to unlock the door for them. Okay.
Exactly. And it doesn't happen as often now, but I really push agents buyers agents to have the appraisers, have anybody outside of maybe if an inspector, if you're going there with the inspector, if you're not going to be there, call the listing agent so they get their authorization saying, hey, I'm going there, an appraiser or whatever. So they're giving. So if you don't, so many times they call the buyer's agent to make the appointment for the appraisal and something like that. And you're giving them the code that's not your listing, and you're not, you're not representing the seller. So you could avoid that by just having them go right through the listing agent, or just getting an email or a text confirming the authorization through the agent.
Correct. Okay, so advertising and marketing, we do get this question a lot too, and sometimes people don't question it, they just do it. And this includes social media, anything that you are putting out there. You have to have your broker, who is Homestar, listed, and the name has to be as prominent or dominant than your name. So if you have your name in all capitals and you have it bold, Homestar has to be that same size, that same dominant, so that they're not looking at your name first and they're not seeing the broker first. It's kind of tricky to do that, and ask your different broker, for their logo templates, because everyone should have them. It doesn't matter if you're a Remax or a Keller Williams or a Century 21 or whatever. All brokerages have the pre-made templates that have their thing on it. And then you just have to put that in and put your name a little bit lower. We all want to be the dominant one, but when we're advertising and we're doing marketing and stuff, the brokerage has to be at least a little bit more prominent than your name.
Right. It's a big one we see all the time. I know you see it. I see it on signs. Even myself, I drive by, see signs from all different companies, and I have no clue until what company it is. And some companies just don't educate their agents, but some are come out and flat out say, yeah, you're doing it wrong. But if you get caught, it's technically it's $1,000 fine for every single one. So if you had 10 listings out there and the state said your sign is not to the rules, they could fine you $1,000 per sign that they see. Tell our agents, I wouldn't want to be the one time that state actually enforces this rule. So we don't see it much in enforcement because the state doesn't have the manpower to do it. But someday your number can get called.
And here's the kicker. If someone goes by and they see your sign in the yard and it's not, or they see an advertisement on Facebook or Insta or wherever, and you have it slightly off somehow, but they're annoyed because you got the listing and they didn't, and all they have to do is turn it into the division for them to look at. Right. And you've now got busted, right?
Yeah, we had that on a postcard once. One of our agents sent out a just listed or just sold postcard, but went on to Century 21, but they picked the logo that just had Century 21 logo, didn't have Homestar on it. And someone complained to the Division of Real Estate. Great, nice thing about the Division of Real Estate, they actually sent us a copy of the card, which had the address of the agent that turned them in, which were from another company. And this was our agent was like, yeah, this agent's in with another company. They're in my market, and we're always butting heads and trying to, get business from each other, and they're watching. So if you're doing well in a market, who this can be other agents trying to turn you in.
Yeah. So cover your back. Not disclosing material defects. I don't even know what to say to that, because we all know that we have to do that, and so does the seller. But you really have to make sure that your seller is filling out that property disclosure. If you know the thing and you're reading the property disclosure and it's not on there, it is your obligation to tell that seller to put it on there.
Well, example, I have this question, and Deb, you have it too, from agents when they're getting listings. There's some gray areas sometimes. Well, they have kind of this, they have kind of that. And the seller's not sure if they legally have to disclose it or not. I always push, you over disclose. You can't over disclose. A buyer's going to buy your house. Anytime a seller doesn't want to disclose something, it's usually because they're trying to hide something, no matter how small or how big it is. They're just trying to get the bare bones minimum. But you have a license on the line. They just have so what I'm talking about this is that sellers sometimes roll the dice saying, okay, the buyer's never going to come after me for, sue me because I said something and come after money. But it's free for someone to file a complaint with the Division of Real Estate. So the seller might not get in trouble because the buyer doesn't want to go through the price, but it can be the smallest little thing. And if they find out, and through investigation find out you knew about a defect of the house and you didn't make the seller disclose it, or you took the listing knowing it, you can't get fined, you can't get suspended, you can't lose your license depending upon that. So the new buyer, once you're listening, they have nothing to lose. Very little time. They could file a complaint online just to try to get, and we've had agents have to defend themselves for getting those things. They never went after the seller, but for some reason, some agents think that it's really only the seller that could get in trouble. But you have a license that something could happen to for free. I mean, what I mean by the new buyers don't have to hire an attorney, don't have to do anything. They could just say they're so upset they're going to get somebody in trouble.
Yep.
On that. So next.
Earnest money commingling funds. I have that kind of grouped together a little bit, but earnest money. It is entirely up to you, buyer's agent, to make sure that that buyer is turning in their earnest money. So explain it to them. Especially if you're using a promissory note, a lot of times when you're in the heat of the moment, you forget to say things. And, we're all human, right? But you need to go back and you should be not go back, but you need to make sure that you're following up with people, even if you forgot to say it the first time and they didn't read it clearly on the purchase agreement, that it has to get turned in immediately. And this is going to be cashed. It's not like, here's a copy of a check for $7,000, but the seller or the buyer knows they don't have that money in their account and they give it to you anyway. That it's got to be that you have to make sure that you are doing everything that you can to prove that you have told that buyer they need to turn this money in, because the listing agents are going to be looking for that confirmation.
Yeah, we've had several agents get fined from the Division of Real Estate. How about several? Maybe like two or three in the last 5 years. I mean, that's several because they didn't get the, not that they didn't get the earnest money. That's part of it. The other reason, they didn't notify the other side. So you physically can't force someone to give it to you. You know, if you keep on asking, but if you forget to ask and you don't follow up and make sure it gets to where the title company, because I've had agents go, well, I told them to call the title company, I just assumed they did. That you have to verify it's there. And if they don't do it, your job as a buyer's agent to notify the other side, the listing side, that they're not following the contract. So 1 second or 30 seconds, I tell agents this is what to say, is that because some buyers just don't see, well, whenever, you don't see that they expect, say, you had 3 days, it's past 3 days, I have to notify the other side. This could affect your offer. In theory, you're out of contract. We don't know what the sellers are going to do. They might have a backup offer and just think that you're flaky and take a new offer. And then usually some buyer might say, well, they can't do that. I'm like, I'm not an attorney. I've seen it happen. They physically can take another offer and just kick you out. Should they legally? That's not for me to decide. So I've helped, if you ever get in these situations, sometimes I always say a purchase agreement is a promise. Someone might break that promise. A buyer might break the promise and not deposit the earnest money in time. A seller might break their promise and go, okay, hey, you're 2 days late on your earnest money. I think you're flaky. I'm going to go, I have this backup offer that's more money. I'm just going to take that. Well, you can't do that. Well, that's a legal battle now. We can't do anything about it. I've seen sellers do that.
Right.
I've seen sellers do that. Can you do it? What do I know, Bev, you probably heard me say, can you do it? Yeah, you can do it, just like you can speed, but you're not supposed to speed. So when buyers say they can't sell the house to someone else, I go, they physically can. But the only way to stop it, if they want to do it, is legally go after them. You know, sometimes we feel like we're in a contract. They can't. They can.
Right. And the commingle funds. Yeah. The commingle funds part is maybe your buyer says that they have cash, but they don't have it in the bank. I'll give you the cash and then you can do it for me. No. That's you commingling funds, right?
Yeah,
so we can't
right.
do that.
Exactly. Yeah, don't get cash. Some people I've said, just get, hey, these people got cash. Can I get a check for them? No. All that kind of thing. So, all right, next slide, Deb, go ahead.
Not presenting offers timely. So who knows if this was going on the last couple years, but it probably was very prevalent during the madness that we had. But this will get you into trouble. And I do believe that we now have to, well, we've always had to make sure that we present all offers to the sellers, right? And at least let them know. And if your seller says, okay, good, but we have a lot of people coming to look at it over the next couple of days, do I have to answer them now? Right? You need to let that buyer's agent know that the seller is going to be waiting to make a decision until Sunday at 6 o'clock or whatever.
And I'll give you another example why this is how things in real estate, even me as a broker, I'll give you something that I never knew or missed until a couple years ago because of the crazy market, is that I knew you had to present offers. If you're a listing agent, when you present offers, it wasn't until there was a problem that we learned about this in our office. And I talked to many brokers, and I'm about to tell you what it is. We didn't even know this, but we learned about this because people were complaining. They were putting multiple offers. Buyers wanted these houses. Buyers were sending in complaints to the Division of Real Estate because wondering if their offers were getting presented by the listing agent. And guess what we found out, because this never has come up in 30 years, is that every offer that is presented to a seller, multiple offers, whatever it is, the agency disclosure form has to be signed. I never knew that, because no one's ever asked for it, never had a complaint to the Division of Real Estate where they even brought that up. So if you get 5 offers on your property, you're supposed to have your seller sign every agency disclosure on every offer and send it back to the other side. Now, again, going into more training, if you don't get it signed, you have to at least write in there, seller refused to say. You can't force someone to sign, but you've got to say, I gave it to them. Just kind of like this consumer guide agency. You don't have to have, consumer guide agencies don't have to be legally signed, but you have to present it. And if they don't sign it, refuse to sign it, you just write on there, I presented it on this date, this time they refused to sign. Same with the agency disclosure form. So we had the state, luckily they didn't do anything to any of our agents, or probably they were just, they knew this wasn't really well known, is that every offer. So I was calling our agents. I'm like, yeah, I got like 30 offers on my property. Well, you got to get all 30 of those signed and send back. So the buyer's agent know that you presented that offer. And I told our agents at that time, if your seller's refusing to sign, I get a text or an email showing that they saw that buyer's offer, because you never know, they might file a complaint. They want it in the state to investigates to verify when and exactly you presented that offer to the buyer. Again, that's only when there's a complaint. Outside of the agency disclosure, there's no other legal for the division of you as a listing agent have to notify the other side of anything else on that, if that makes sense. So sorry.
Right. And they can even write rejected across the top of the ones that they
Right.
did not accept. Yeah. And then that there, the seller saw it. Right. And that's all what this is about.
Exactly. And I've had agents just not if this happens, is that they've pulled out they've all these offers, and they because they're all in DocuSign or something like that, or .loop, and they're like, I don't want them to go in each like 10 different offers to pull out every agency of all the ones they denied. I've had agents pull them all out, put them in one file, send it to in DocuSign. Here are the 10 offers that we refused. Right. Sign them all, send them there. There's technical things that you could do to make it easier for them.
Yep. Not maintaining complete files. The broker has to keep all the paperwork that you send us, but you are responsible for keeping all of the paperwork that you get, even if you have a consumer guide that never went anywhere. Right? Maybe that person never bought anything from you. Maybe they never sold anything from you. You still got to keep it.
Technically, I'll just then legally, basically every single person, technically every conversation you had with someone about real estate, you're supposed to have a record of it. Every time you show a property, you should have a record of how many you showed properties to. You're supposed to, anytime you conduct real estate, which is opening your mouth, sending a text or email or showing a property, you're supposed to have a record of that you did that, or a log minimum. But again, there's never a problem until there's a problem. All of a sudden there's a lawsuit, someone figured something, or someone filed a complaint. The division's going to say, let's see your file on these people. If you even talk to someone, didn't even show them a house. Example, we got pulled into one. We had a listing about non-disclosure. Just want to give you examples. We had a listing, lost the listing. A new company got it. That company sold it to someone else. And like a year later, there was a lawsuit about what was said about the property, the condition of the property or whatever. We were brought into it because on our listing, they showed had advertised this. So the people bought it, saw the advertisement like on the MLS or website when we had it, then finally bought it with the other company. And we were brought in based on, it wasn't even our listing anymore. So again, they wanted to see a copy of our file of what the sellers filled out. That's why I suggest to agents, I don't know, we're not extremely hard on this, is that when you fill out your MLS input sheet with all of what you said, you should get the seller's authorization or signature approving what you're saying in the description. again, most companies, most people don't do it, but if it's anything on the gray area of what you're saying about the condition of the property, you should get the seller's signature so they can't ever say, well, I told my agent that, and I don't know why they said that in the advertisement, stuff like that to help protect yourself.
Licensee allowing unlicensed activity. This is really kind of assistance and such. So if you have someone that's working with you, helping you with marketing, helping you with your transactions and stuff, and they are not licensed, then you need to know the rules of what they're allowed to do, what their scope is, and what they are not allowed to do. And
Yeah,
I would tell people all the time, stay in your lane. And this is one of those, you have to make sure that the unlicensed person is staying in their lane, because you're the one that's going to get in trouble for it.
Exactly. And I always say it's very simple. Some agents are like, well, what can I have them do, cannot do? How about start with this? Have them never talk to your clients ever. Email them, or ever. If they're unlicensed, anything they can say or do. Simple thing, technically, if someone calls the office, like all of us in our most of us in our office are licensed. If someone calls the office going, where's this house I saw on this thing? And we can't even, unless you're licensed, give an address or directions or describe anything to the public. So I tell unlicensed things, you can talk to other agents, that's fine. Unlicensed people could talk to other agents because they're not the public. But as soon as you're talking to a buyer or a seller or requesting documents or asking to sign things, or even telling them, setting up appointments saying, hey, here's the address of the house you have an appointment for, can be saying that that's something you need a license for. And again, are there people out there and agents and teams and things doing that? Yes, they are. They're just not getting no problem. They haven't had any problems on that.
Right. So can your transaction coordinator go over there and set up your open house and sit there with the sign-in sheet and let people come in the door and talk to them? No. That's practicing real estate.
Exactly. I know there's some gray area. Sometimes agents are like, well, I'm not having them talk to anybody, but opening the door for someone can be construed as, which I think it is practicing real estate. Correct. So you can't have someone sit there. Can sellers do their own? Yes. Can a seller have their own open house? Yes, a seller can have can a seller have their cousin do an open house? Yes, as long as it's not doesn't someone that you represent. So you don't have to be there for an open house. Sellers can do their own open houses if you want, but you can't have a representative of you be at the open house or on that. So go ahead, Deb.
No written consent to contract changes. So make sure that you are sitting with your person when you're writing out the contract, when you're making changes, that they are initialing and dating or signing whatever needs to be done, and that you're just not doing things for them, because they'll be like, I don't know, I never said that, I didn't do that. And that's where you're going to get into trouble. Okay. I also want to segue this into the MLS, where a lot of agents get in a rush, they're in a hurry, the seller wants to lower the price, or they want to extend the listing or take it temporarily off the market. And previous to the MLS now, when it was the other MLS normals, we could use an email to get those things done from the seller. Well, now that is MLS now, and especially since Ann Pettit has been in control of things over there, you have to have that edit sheet signed by your seller if we're making any changes, or if you are making any changes. If you're in a brokerage where you're allowed to do your own listings and stuff, you need to keep yourself in check with that, because you will get in a lot of trouble if you're just using an email for it. That does not satisfy their requirements. If they audit you, they are going to fine you. And
right,
who wants
exactly.
to pay money?
This
right?
happens, or again, that's another thing, same type of thing, happens all the time. Agents do this all the time, but we like to keep our agents as safe as possible.
Yeah. So. Yeah, Carly will tell you, I'll do it for you, but this does not satisfy the requirement. Please send the edit sheet as soon as you can. Yep. This one I'm letting you do. Salespersons operating outside the brokerage.
So basically, let's say, without making this a half-hour thing, is that once you're an agent, you're an agent. No matter, you can't like turn off your license and your ethics in what you do. So when you are an agent, when you're buying or selling property of your own personal stuff, or you're an investor in a corporation or a LLC buying or selling property, if you are the spouse of someone's, you went and just let me go, my opinion, my legal expertise of knowledge, but I'm not an attorney. When you're licensed, or when you're married in Ohio, you're a partnership, you're a legal partnership. So when an agent says, well, that's my husband's house, or that's my wife's house, there's no such thing. That's, you're part of you and you corporation married. That's your house too. It's not just because they bought it before or after on that, or my husband's or wife's LLC, I'm not involved in it. No, you legally are. So the whole point is anything you can do can be connected to your license. So you have yourself to a higher standard. Not to go in deep. So example, you buy a house from an owner by themselves, you're held to a different standard. In theory, the way I view it, if you convince someone to sell you a house for $100,000 as an agent, and you know it's worth $150,000, you can be in a license law problem. Just because you negotiated it down lower. If you sell things on your own and you don't, use the correct forms or agency, basically anything you do, I'll say this, I know for a 99.999% fact, anything you buy or sell, if it's outside your brokerage, you still have to give everybody agency disclosure form to notify them that you are an agent, a licensed agent. Also, you could get sued based on those fees because you are licensed, because they supposedly were held to a higher standard. So that's exactly what I'm trying to say is, in theory, you decide, I'm going to buy an investment property. This people are buying it on they're selling it on their own, or I'm going to just make some calls, some random calls to some areas to see if I could buy some property to use them as rental properties. And if you buy a house, you're like, well, I'm going to get a good deal on this house. I think this house is worth $150,000, but I'm going to try to get it for $100,000. You just, my opinion, my view, you broke your license law. You can't do that to someone if they're unrepresented. If they're represented by another agent who's looking out for their best interest, then that agent's their job to make sure they get the highest price for their house. But if they're not represented, so the point being to this is that any of our agents, that you definitely call me if you're buying or selling properties and you're not going through the brokerage, which I mean by anything that our rule for our office is this, is that anything you do has to be done through the brokerage. We have some exceptions, but we do some things, especially when you're buying property that's not listed with another company, but we make sure you're doing the right thing of being disclosed to the other side that you are an agent, agency disclosure. So basically, if you're buying or selling anything, make sure you contact us in the office so we make sure you're protected on that. And I could go on and on about all that, but let's just stop with that. And again, what do I say when people, and then I'll just jump into this because it's a pet peeve of mine, wholesaling. This is a reason why we don't like wholesaling. We don't do wholesale. We don't want our agents to do wholesaling, but this is the exact reason why agents can't be wholesalers. You can't walk in, call someone on a house and say, hey, I'm going to buy your house for $50,000, knowing in your head that the house is worth more and you're going to sell it within 30 days or 60 days or less to someone else and make a profit for that. That is basically telling unethical as an agent, telling the people that your house is worth 50 when you already know it's worth more and you're going to sell it for more. That's my interpretation of it. I think I'm 99.9% right on it. I won't go on to a whole class of why I hate wholesaling. Hate it. And so, and if there's anybody wholesaling watch this, call me. I'll tell you, I'll rip it down to the ground, because you don't, anybody out there, you don't have 30 years of experience in real estate. You haven't been through flipping and short sales and appraisals and this and that. I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm wholesaling, but all right, next, go ahead, Deb.
That it's good. It's all good because that drives the point into what we're trying to get across to you all. So I hope. Forgetting the meaning of fiduciary, just remember that this one I really kind of associate with that agency disclosure, y'all, and dual agency. I am not a fan of that. That's my soap opera, my soapbox. I'm not a fan of dual agency because I feel that if you have a listing agreement with a seller and you're telling them, oh yeah, list with me because I'm going to totally advocate for you and get everything I possibly can and blah, blah, blah. And then you'll hold an open house and a buyer comes through and they want to write an offer and they're like, I don't have representation. I don't need one. You can do it for me. You now have to go back and tell your seller, I'm breaking my word with you because I'm greedy. And to me, dual agency, that's all what it's about. It's about the money.
Yeah,
right?
let me make sure this is, let me make sure I'm clear on this too, is that call us first before you get into a dual agent situation, because you don't always have to be a dual agent. So and I know this for a fact, that number one thing that agents get in trouble with the Division of Real Estate is agency, and specifically dual agency. Dual agency is you are representing the best interest of both sides, not working for both sides. So sometimes agents, I get this call several times a month, or at least once or twice a week. Exact example that Debbie got. So a buyer walks in or calls you off a sign and wants you to show a property. First thing you do is let them know you give them a consumer guide agency and you tell them, I represent the seller. And the buyer says, I want to put an offer on a house. Totally fine. You just say, I could work with you and write up the offer, but I'm not a dual agent. I represent the seller. You have no representation. And most buyers, I don't care as long as you're doing the work. You could work for the buyer, but you don't represent their best interest. So what happens is most sellers or agents sometimes think, I have to be a dual agent. That's for agency. That doesn't mean you're working for both sides. So yes, agents can write up offers on their listings with a buyer not representing any. But when I tell, this is my first check on this, is that, do you know this buyer? No. Have you ever shown them other properties and discussed the other properties and their finances? No. Great. You just work for the seller, one agent involved in the seller side, and you explain that, give them the consumer guide, explain to them that they have no representation, looking out for the seller's best interest, but I can write up the offer for you. That's legally fine. The problem is when agents, and just like Debbie, I think what you were going to, if I was a seller, and sellers, a lot of them really understood dual agency, I would, my feeling is, I think, but we don't do it because no one does this, is if I would ask a buyer agent, if I'm listing agent, I never want you to be a dual agent. I want you to represent me and try to get me the highest price sale. When you become a dual agent, now you're not supposed to tell each other anything.
Right.
So a lot of agents, but again, this is what it goes bad. So I think a lot of dual agents and example, and Deb, we come across this. I have agent go, hey, I'm selling my own property and a buyer's buying it, so I'm a dual agent. I'm like, that's theoretically impossible.
Right.
So you can't, if the buyer tells you, hey, I want to offer 150, but I paid 200 for this house. Technically, when you're a dual agent, you're not allowed to tell the seller that. You're impartial now. You're like a mediator. But how would you do that with your own property or a family member or a friend? So again, even our attorneys say avoid dual agency as much as possible, but sometimes you are forced into it. Example, you have a listing and you've had it for a month and you have a buyer you've been showing 30 houses to, and you know all about them, and your buyer, you know your seller, then you're forced into being a dual agent because you actually have a relationship with both sides. That to me is more when you're a dual agent. on that, if that makes sense. So I'm sorry, I jumped in there. Go ahead, Deb.
No, that's perfect. And it just encumbered the improper representation part too. So we can skip that part now because all of that is together. And if you want to talk more about that, you can always contact us so we can be a little bit more clear. Just remember though, the meaning of fiduciary is, you know, you're advocating for that person and you know all of their personal stuff. So yeah, if you know personal private information about both parties, you can't be impartial because you already know it. Okay,
Right.
so not reporting convictions, which are sentenced to the division. So there's a little bit of confusion about that when someone gets into trouble. It's once you are sentenced, if you are ever accused of something, you don't have to report it until you've actually been sentenced for that. But it is important that they do know about those things because some things will revoke your license. So unfortunately, but
Yeah.
it doesn't happen often because most agents, they have to go through screening, background screening and stuff like that now too, and fingerprinting and everything. So they've kind of caught it on the front end. It's just if something happens to you after you've already been licensed, you do need to report it to the division if you get sentenced for something, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Transactions belonging to the broker is on here. Just because y'all need to remember that, yes, you have gotten the listing agreement or you have the purchase agreement and stuff like that, but the transaction belongs to Tony if you work with Homestar, you know. So if we don't pretty much enforce this with anybody, but it could. He could
Right.
come
Yeah.
back
I
and
mean,
say, no, this
but
is my listing. You're not taking it with you when you leave, you know.
right. Yeah. Basically, you know, I view it as being the broker. These are your customers. These are your listings. They're yours, but legally they're mine. So I got to make sure you're doing things right.
Yeah.
And making sure, you know, and a handful of times in my career, I had to take things away from people because I'm legally in charge of things and I got to make sure they're done right. Very infrequently, maybe once every other year or so. And it's usually with an agent that's newer or just not experienced and I have to have someone come in and help because they're just not doing it right. But any agent, you know, my experience, any agent that's just willing to want to do the right things and make sure their clients are taken care of, they're going to do it fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Also, what you do with commission. So this just came up with one of our agents just because we trust so much. Technically, every referral, if you do a referral to another company, or you're getting a referral from another company, technically they all should be signed by the broker because you as an agent don't have the authorization to give commission to another agent. That's the broker's commission. So you got to get broker's authorization for that. So example, I have had agents call, you know, I mean, they haven't, knock on wood, hasn't happened in many years, but I have one time I had one agent that said it was giving all of their commission away. They got a referral and were giving it all to another agent that gave them the referral and weren't taking a cent because it was a friend of a friend and they gave them the person and they didn't negotiate a money. They just thought they were doing a good deed. I said, you can't do that. I didn't authorize you to give all your commission away. We're legally involved in the sale. Same with the other way. If you're getting a referral from another company, another agent goes, hey, I'm going to pay you 25%. If their broker doesn't sign and agree to it, their actual principal broker of their office, that broker might go at close and go, I didn't authorize that. That agent wasn't authorized to offer that commission, and you might not get paid that referral fee. So again, 99 times out of 100, everybody plays nice and fair, but occasionally you never know. You might get an agent that sends you, hey, I'll pay you. You're sending a referral, but they didn't get their broker approval, and their broker might say, no, you can't do that. Our normal fee is this. So we haven't had it happen in a while. I mean, many years ago, I had a few referrals that we've sent out to other companies, and the brokers never signed and wouldn't refuse to pay us, and we never got anything. So a referral piece of pay is just a piece of paper, just a promise. If someone breaks their promise, you know, what are you going to do? We have to go sue them for that money, and sometimes it's not worth it. So
right.
All right, next.
Okay, not cooperating with the division. So this one came from Ann Pettit when we were having our core law class, because I never even thought of this. I never thought of people not cooperating with the division. But, so if the division contacts you as a real estate agent for whatever reason and asks you for information about something, whether it's a claim or what have you, they're expecting an answer immediately. This is our duty to them, right? To cooperate fully, turn in all paperwork that they ask for, answer all questions. You can't ghost them. I do know somebody actually that's not with our brokerage anymore, but this was quite a few years ago, and I know you know who I'm talking about, who still will not cooperate with them. And there was a lawsuit involved, and they won't cooperate with anybody. That person's going to be in a lot of trouble. So just cooperate with them, give them everything that you have. Even if you say, well, this is a bogus complaint, I'm not doing anything about it, just do it.
Now, remember too, this is licensed law, a lot of these things. Yep. So what we really didn't even go into and hopefully this, I never even heard of anybody this happening to, but you're breaking the law. There can be jail and can be more than that come after you criminally if you do something wrong. Like you could, if you totally did something way off a licensed law and misrepresented yourself. I mean, they could come after you criminally, not just suspend your license or do this. So if you really read into it, it's law. I mean, they really, if you're doing something so bad, and that's what I said, I'm glad to say in our industry and being here 30 years, I've never seen somebody do something completely illegally where they could be that, but I've seen agents not do the right things here or there, but not on purpose. Right. Not to hurt anybody. I haven't seen that happen, knock on wood, and hopefully never will. So, all right.
You just can't ignore them is all. So we have Mike is doing core law on February 11th. We have Hush that's doing stopping problems before they come problems on March 2nd. That's a Thursday. The 22nd, Mike's doing a comparison between DocuSign and dotloop. These are all CEUs for you. And then April 5th, that core ethics that was supposed to be today is now been moved over to April 5th with Mike Ferrante. And that little thing on there that says Zoom link only, no dial-in, I should have had it on all of them. But just so you know, when you're doing these Zoom CEUs with anyone, not just Hush or Mike, you have to be on camera. They have to be able to see you, the video, because it's the same as if you were sitting in the classroom. Okay, so.
Exactly. All right, and last today, National Pizza Day
is coming up on February 9th. I thought that was a good one for y'all to post on your social media. It gets conversation going, and everybody loves pizza, right? So.
Right. Who doesn't love pizza? That's good. So
I know it was a little bit longer today, but this was a good session. It's just for some of you, it's a basic reminder of things just to remember. Like he said, everything that we're talking about is licensed law, right? So let's just keep ourselves out of trouble.
Right. And anything you have questions about, you don't even have to go through us. It's like you pay your board dues. There's a OAR, Ohio Association of Realtors legal hotline. If you go to the website, you can contact them. Obviously call the Division of Real Estate and find out direct from them. But our legal hotline with the Ohio Division of Real Estate, remember, or Ohio Association of Realtors, remember the Division of Real Estate, remember from your classes, is the one that polices us. The Ohio Association of Realtors is our board, is the people that kind of tell us what we should be doing and should be giving us good advice and guidance on this. So the legal hotline at OAR, the Ohio Association of Realtors, is going to tell you their interpretation of things and help you what you should do or shouldn't do. But they're not the actual people that police you. They're our union, but they're supposed to help protect us and make sure we're doing the right things. So, just want to make sure you clarify with that. Like sometimes when I say board or I say the division, agents get mixed up of which one's which. And like you got to check with the board or the division on things. I try to, specify Ohio Division of Real Estate or Ohio Association of Realtors or your local board, or check with the MLS. So there's MLS rules So some of the things we went over are MLS rules, some of them are board rules, some of them are laws with the Division of Real Estate. But we could help, Debbie and I help you. They're all serious, but we could specify exactly whose rule it is, or if it's a law or a guideline. So
Yeah.
and
Tony will post this all on his
and-
YouTube so that you can go back and grab it at any time.
And last, I will just say this is a last important thing. And then there's a fourth thing. You know what the fourth thing is? Thing that's not a rule, not a guideline, not a law, but things that are best practices to keep you out of a lawsuit. So sometimes there's things that there's no law that we can't do something. There's no rule, there's no guideline, but keep you out of lawsuit. Example, just might as well give an example. If someone says, hey, there was a death in the house, do I have to disclose that? As far as I know, I don't think it's anywhere. If you found something in all these years, there's no law that says you have to. There's no rule. There's no nothing. Guideline by the Division of Real Estate. I've never seen it. Might be one out there. So if you do, let me know. But I tell everybody, disclose it. Disclose it. Anything that could affect the buyer buying a house. Example, if I'm on my soapbox. The next door neighbor likes to is a mechanic and works at cars at night and his house when he gets off his other job and is revving engines all night long. And is that legally have to be disclosed? No. But I would tell a seller, I mean, you don't have to, but I said, I think you should disclose that. There's sometimes excess noise that's happening. The next door neighbor. So if they, someone buys a house as a little baby and they get upset, they never know. You could try to sue you because you didn't disclose something, but you don't legally have to, but could get into a lawsuit for something you didn't really do on purpose. So why I thought of that is I saw an article, and sorry to keep going. I saw there's a lawsuit going on right now in Cleveland. I think it's in Cleveland, because one of the neighbors is suing the next door neighbor because they built a pizza oven outside in their backyard, and they're upset when they cook pizzas because the smell and the smoke goes into their yard sometimes.
Oh, wow.
So you never know. Anything that could possibly affect a buyer from buying the house, no matter if you should or not. I always tell sellers, I tell agents, disclose it. You never know. Just because someone might get upset that you should have told me that, or I wouldn't have bought the house. Can they legally, technically supposed to come after you? No, but can someone could file a lawsuit for anything. And it costs you time and money, even though you didn't do anything wrong. So hopefully I made some clear there. So me being your broker, any Century 21 Homestar agent, and your owner, which means is that I'm legally responsible for you, and I ultimately profit or lose money, and when you do too. So I'm 100% vested in every deal you do. So I will give you overly protective advice, so you don't have to worry about anything. So, all right, that's it. Now I'm done.
Oh, no, that's fine. I think we had a great session today. Like I said, he will save it on your YouTube for all of you that are like, wow, you just blew my brain with all of this stuff, right? You can go back and look at it there. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Have a good day.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.